Hey guys, Gijoe here, and welcome back to my bunker in Atlanta. I want to talk to you today about some possible variances to the Cliffside bunker slash WarTorn flight stands. I have heard a few people, I know General Hand Grenade and a couple others, Big E, have talked about some possible height variances for the flight stands for the three different types of planes. And of course here you have the German version of a fighter, tactical bomber, and a strategic bomber. And rather than have everything at the same level, as you've probably seen in some of my other videos, trying to come up with some ideas on what might be some possible heights for the different levels of planes. So what I did was I talked with WarTorn on the phone here last night for, I don't know, an hour or two, and he had some great suggestions. So these are some things that we talked about, and some things to consider if you are thinking about doing the varied heights for the flight stands and customizing them. One is that WarTorn said that the base of the flight stand is about 3 millimeters. So what I did was I took two chips and I tried to line up the two chips, and I found that two chips is just barely over the height of the flight stand. So one chip would not be quite high enough, as you can see. So I think that two chips is right at about 3 millimeters. Now, I first started with two chips, and I did two chips higher than the fighter to see if there was enough clearance. And then of course I added another two chips, so there'll be four chips then, 1, 2, 3, 4 for the bomber, and to see if this would work for a possible height. Now, let me get this situated, sorry. So that seems to work, but as you can, I don't know if you can tell, but that's really, really close. Let me take this off. Okay, as you can see, that's really close. And there is clearance, but what I'd be concerned about is the wing maybe catching the tail. See, that's going to catch. So when I first experimented with this, I thought, you know, that might not be enough height. So what I did was I then added another chip. So let me move this out of the way. Sorry for the wobbly here. I'm trying to do a couple things at once. So if I did three chips, that definitely allows a little more clearance for the fighter to sit right underneath the TAC. And then if I added another two chips, because this needs to be double what the TAC is. So I've got 3 chips here and 6 chips here. That seems to be a pretty good amount of clearance. And I like the variance. And if you come from the side, you can kind of see the different levels, how it kind of adds a little more depth to the board. So I like this. I like it a lot, actually. Now, there were a few things to consider in that all the planes are not made equal. So some of them have higher tail fins. Some of them have, you know, of course, wheel carriages underneath like this. So I had to make sure to allow for that. And one of the biggest variances is in the U.S. Air Force. So let's take a look at that. So here's my TAC bomber, and here's my. I decided to use the Corsair because the Corsair has is not quite as flat as the P-38. So if the Corsair will work, I know that the P-38 will. So what I found was, in general, this works pretty well. However, the tail fin right back here for the Dauntless is a little bit high. So there's barely clearing, but I think that would work. And what this would allow you to do is it would allow you to put the planes even a lot closer to each other. You could even slide, you know, if you're in a tight zone, you could even slide these planes all up kind of underneath each other, because obviously the base right here would not be that big. It would be as big as that. So I could slide all these bases right there and I could have all these planes virtually right underneath each other almost, kind of saving a lot of space and real estate. So I think that looks great. I really, really, really like it. Now, and what I did was I had to go through and I had to test all of the different nations. I tested Japan, I tested the Soviets, I tested UK, and this was the greater variance. So this was the U.S. planes were the ones I had to really be concerned about. It was what I was finding. So, and obviously, if I take this off and I put the P-38, that leaves plenty of room for the P-38. So, like I said, the Corsair was the one that was the biggest concern. So, so for measurements, now, as I said before, 2 of these chips equaled about 3 millimeters. So 2 of these chips equaled about 3 millimeters. So when I measured 3 chips equaled just under 5 millimeters, if I'm not mistaken. So if we look at the measurements from what WarTorn gave me and has given the community, I think the original stand, and this is the original stand, of course, the original stand is, I think, right at 32 millimeters. Then that would make this post height would need to be 37 millimeters, or just under 37 millimeters. And then that would make the strategic bombers having to be at 42 millimeters, or just under 42. So it looks like that if we're going to do varied heights for all 3 planes and allow room for clearance underneath them, then I'm really not sure we can go much lower. Now, some of the countries I think we can go lower. Some of the countries, like I think UK, I think we can get away with maybe 2 chips height here and 4 chips here. But if you want all of your stands to be kind of universal, you need just 1 height for your strategic bomber stand and 1 height for your tactical bomber stand. So I think this will be about as low as we'll be able to go, if I'm not mistaken. And WarTorn, if you happen to be watching this and you want to chime in or give your thoughts, feel free to. But so again, this will be 32 millimeters, I believe. This will have to be 37, and this would have to be right under 42. So those would be the measurements. Now, the concern, of course, would be the weight distribution. Now, if you saw my first video, you remember how I talked about how awesome the weight distribution is on these flight stands. Okay. Now, my concern is if we go 42 right here, I'm worried about how wobbly that these bombers are going to be. I'm sure it's going to not be quite as sturdy as this, but something to think about. Now, the only thing I didn't take into consideration is there is a little bit of height added because of the magnets on top. So, WarTorn, I'm not sure how we would figure this out because I've already glued all of my planes on. I've already glued the magnets on top of the stands. So, if this is 32, it's actually a little bit higher because of the magnet. And then this will be 35. But it'd probably be a little bit shorter than 35 because of the magnet. So maybe this ends up not being 42. Maybe this ends up being around 40 millimeters. But and then once you add the magnets, that's what brings a little bit more height to it. But anyway, just some thoughts, and feel free to chime in if you want. Like I said, I think WarTorn might do a test on this here sometime soon to see if this height right here is going to, this height right here is going to work for the bombers. But just some thoughts. I love the look. It's just a matter of physics, I guess, now, if we can get away with having posts that high without affecting the balance too much to where this is going to fall over. So anyways, I hope you enjoy. I hope that gets maybe some of your ideas rolling in your head. And if I'm missing something, or if you guys have some different ideas that how we can maybe get some different heights out of this without affecting the stableness of the strategic bomber, then I'm definitely open to thoughts and suggestions. So, and I'm sure WarTorn is as well. So, thanks for watching, guys, and we'll see you soon.